Feedback is an essential, unavoidable part of the workplace. But some supervisors are better at delivering job performance critiques than others, just as some employees are better at receiving feedback than others. In our Friday Focus on You this week, workplace expert Mary Abbajay looks at giving and receiving feedback. It's good to see you again. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Bruce.
We love having you here. And let me give you some feedback. You look lovely.
You look marvelous, darling. Well, I will take that, so thank you.
It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, too. Yeah, and feedback is so important, and people are terrible at it. We hate giving it. We hate getting it, whether it's good or bad. And I got to tell you, it's an art form, and so I'm really excited to talk about this today.
It's a good topic, and we'll get to it in depth. But why don't we open up the phone lines early, because I'm curious if you have workplace issues, they can resolve around feedback or not. If you have a general question for Mary, we're actually going to keep her 2 segments today, so additional time allowing for your comments, your questions or concerns about life in the workplace. So 703-387-1020 is the number here. Do join us. We'll go to the phones as your calls come in. Again, our number here, 703-387-1020. When you talk about feedback, are you talking about primarily the annual critique, where it's a formal process and there's paperwork and there's a sit-down?
And you sign it.
Or are you talking about just sort of all of it, including the...
I'm talking about all of it.
So at the end of a project.
At the end of a project. Or, more importantly, the feedback that you should be giving all the time to people, especially if they're not meeting your expectations. Because what happens, I will tell you, so much of what happens in the workplace, so much dysfunction happens because a manager or a colleague is hesitant to give someone feedback on how their behavior is impacting them or the team. And so we feel a pinch, we don't say anything, we don't do anything, and then we start building up stories in our head, and then it turns into conflict, and all the time, the other person has no idea that they were doing something wrong. So we're talking about being able to give feedback on a regular basis, especially when you feel a pinch about something.
I would think that I've never been a boss, but I would think that it would sort of be easy.
This whole team doesn't work for you? Everyone is just in the Brewster point like empire?
Believe me. By the way, do you say I would think that if you're the boss and you're the hiring person and the firing person, and presumably you've been in the workplace a while, that it wouldn't be that hard.
Oh.
I mean,
Here's why it's hard.
It comes with the gig.
It comes with the gig, but most people don't want to do it. They don't want to do it for a couple of reasons. One, it is hard to do, right? Number 2, they don't want to be the bad guy. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings. You don't want to damage the relationship. It takes time. Giving feedback thoughtfully and in a way where people can hear it takes a lot of time. So often we see in the workplace, or even in our personal lives, we choose not to do it because it's kind of the path of least resistance, just to let it slide and not say anything, and then it will eat at us.
But I guess what surprises me is that every supervisor, every boss has a boss, and they're responsible for deliverables up the chain of command, just as people at the say the worker level have to their supervisor or director or whatever. So sure, I might not like, if I'm your boss, I might not like giving you feedback, but I know that Joe, the senior VP, is breathing down my neck for the project or whatever, the product or what have you. So I better make sure that you and I are communicating at some level.
That's exactly right. And if every manager thought like that, I'd be out of a job, right? There would be no workplace dysfunction, because I will tell you, so much of what happens is because people don't give feedback.
So what do good feedback givers do?
Great question.
Good?
I was hoping you would ask that. All right, so a couple things about giving feedback. First of all, you have to really isolate what it is you're giving feedback on. One of my favorite coaches, a woman named Daphne Miller, talks about it like this. She's like, you have a big bowl of spaghetti, right? And it's so tempting just to throw that whole bowl of spaghetti at you. But what you have to do is pull out that strand that's most important. So you have to really think about what is the issue, what's the behavior, what is the purpose of the feedback, what are you trying to accomplish. If you're giving feedback around anger or emotion, then you're not going to do it well. So you've got to...
What do you mean feedback around anger?
So let's say I'm just mad at you. You did something that made me mad. If I do that from a place of anger, it's not going to go well. The idea of feedback is to shed light, not heat. I'm not doing it to slam you. I'm doing it because you need to know this information for your success, for my success, and for the organization's success. So it takes a while to really think about it. The words you use are so important. So good feedback givers are very thoughtful about their words. I'm going to show you a model in a few minutes. There's a process for doing it, and it takes time to prepare, because you're going to give feedback to someone and they just may resist it.
how much of establishing a good feedback process depends upon expectations being laid out clearly and carefully ahead of time, where there's understanding and maybe even buy-in on the part of the employee that here's what we're about, here's what I need, and here's what in 6 months I'm going to want to be able to come back to you, and we're both going to want to be able to say that these different things were done. So setting expectations and clear guidelines up front does sort of focus what will come later, right?
It does, because that way you can use that when you give feedback. So the model that we often tell people to do is called SBI, situation, behavior, and impact. So when you give feedback to someone, you want to talk about the situation specifically. So, for example, I would say to you, last Tuesday at our weekly team meeting, you were 30 minutes late. This was the third time you've been late in 3 months, right? I'm not impugning your intention. I'm just stating the facts, right? We have this weekly meeting. Then so that's the situation and your behavior. You were late. Then I'm going to talk about the impact. When you arrive late, we have to stop the meeting and restart and recap, which makes the first 30 minutes feel like a waste of time for everybody on the team. The team has expressed frustration, so the impact on them is they're starting to get annoyed with you, and the impact on me is I feel disrespected, and I feel it seems disrespectful. So that's the impact. Now we talk about what we're going to do about it. So what I'd like to talk with you today, Bruce, is how we can get you on time for the meeting, or if there's something that's keeping you from being on time, or let's talk about how we can resolve this, because the team and I need you to be on time.
It makes perfect sense when you lay it out that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a work of art.
I didn't call you disrespectful. I never said you were disrespectful, right? I never impugned your intentions. I laid out the facts. I talked about the impact of your behavior on me and the team and my desire to resolve it.
Now, if you're a boss and you've got that type of situation, that's it's not a good thing, but it's much easier to hang your hat on the person who comes late to a meeting 3 times in a row, half an hour each time, whereas a lot of the things about the work world are murkier, aren't they?
Yeah.
Where we don't feel like you're pulling your weight, and then it becomes a thing of, well, I did, the research on this project, and so only had to do only had to put out the lunch for the client, and you get into that kind of subjective.
That's right. And so
subjective aspect.
And that's what makes it really hard. So then when you're going to give feedback like that, then you want to really pull out what you do know and say, here's how I see it. How do you see it? And then you have time for them to see it and say, well, it looks like we have mismatched expectations, and then you go back over and review your expectations again. It's a very delicate dance, but you want to make sure that you are neutral, that you are not impugning someone, and you're just talking about how you see the situation.
We're going to talk about this more in our second segment, but let's get the conversation started now from the employee perspective. You're sitting down with your supervisor, the boss.
Yeah.
The boss's boss,
or
right?
Even a colleague, by the way. It could also be a colleague.
Yeah,
giving you
that's a
feedback.
big one. That's an interesting one. Then we'll put that to the next segment as well. But in general, your thoughts on receiving feedback.
First, breathe, right? You want to breathe. So the thing about giving feedback is no one likes it. We're not good at receiving it. We're not even good at receiving good feedback. We always push that off. Oh, yeah,
no, we are. Fine.
So first of all, you need to breathe. You want to take down your defenses. Even though feedback is sometimes more about the giver than the receiver, you've got to be looking for that kernel of truth, that golden nugget that can help you. You are getting this feedback for a reason. Try and listen to what it is. Take notes if it helps you, right? Ask questions. Tell me more. Don't go defensive. You really want to draw out from the feedback giver what it is that you're not doing that's meeting their expectations.
I could see, even if you're completely faking and completely disingenuous, that being able to tell the boss, tell me more.
Yeah.
You hate the whole notion of that, but it's the right thing to do, therefore you do it.
It's the right thing to do. And the feedback you may be getting might be totally wrong. It might be totally off mark. That's okay. You need to still hear it because you're going to learn more about there's something not connecting between you and the other person.
Right.
So even if it's wrong, don't be defensive. See if you can learn what that feedback's about.
Because as part of the process of moving forward, you at least have to know where the boss is.
That's right.
So that if he or she is completely
crazy,
wrong and crazy, you're at least dealing with the reality of where they are, so
Yep.
you can start to steer them in a better direction.
Yep.
Mary, stand by for just a moment. Most of you will see more of our conversation with Mary Abbajay in just a moment. For those of you watching after dark, check out our conversation online at news8newstalk.com. That's our blog. It's news8newstalk.com. Back in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to the second half of News Talk here on News Channel 8. It's our Friday Focus on You, and we're always delighted to have our workplace expert, Mary Abbajay, here. She's with the Career Stone Group. We visit once a month to talk about issues that are important in the workplace, things, advice, and tips for making your work life better, your work life better. Welcome back, everybody, to the second half of News Talk here on News Channel 8. It's our Friday Focus on You, and we're always delighted to have our workplace expert, Mary Abbajay, here. She's with the Career Stone Group. We visit once a month to talk about issues that are important in the workplace, things, advice, and tips for making your work life better, your work life better. So today it's feedback, giving feedback, receiving feedback, and not just the annual review, all the feedback and communication that supervisors and employees have during the course of a year. We've posted the number to the bottom of the screen. Join us. Join the conversation. If you have a question or comment, it doesn't have to deal with feedback necessarily. If you want to talk with Mary one-on-one, grab this opportunity. We'll go to the phones as your calls come in at area code 703-387-1020. Join the conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, we'll go to the phones as your calls come in. It's so timely that we're doing this because I was coming up the elevator the other day, and you know how in elevators now you have these TV screens that show this kind of random mix of stuff? And the topic this week, you know, the little management 101 factoid, it said that when you're giving feedback, begin with the words, I'm going to give you some feedback.
Yes.
And I'm like, really?
Which in some ways is going to like just put people on edge.
But it is stupid.
It does sound so stupid, but you want to prepare people,
really?
Right? You really do want to prepare. At that level of basic. I'm going to give you some feedback so you can kind of prepare them, and you want to make it warm as you can. And if you're giving it to a colleague, you also want to get permission. If it's just a colleague, say, is it okay if I give you some feedback on something that's going on? I want to discuss something important with you. So give the person a little time to prepare.
So when it's lateral, if you and I are coworkers, we're equals, and we're on let's say we're on the same team, same project, whatever. It's not a given that I can just unload my issues with you, right?
Well, and that's exactly where it gets really difficult. So we have to stop thinking about feedback as unloading issues, right?
Well, you know.
Right, I know, but it's right. It makes it much more difficult. But these are important relationships, right? Your colleagues, and if your colleagues are off doing something that's having a negative impact on you, they need to know because they're going to keep doing it because they have no idea it's not working for you. So it's a much more difficult situation, but almost even more important to be able to give feedback and receive it from your colleagues.
If you and I are on the same project and you think I'm not pulling my weight, how do you decide? Because I'm sure there are times where going to the person directly is better, and there are times where going to the supervisor is better. Neither is easy, but if you get to the point where you're just the status quo is you can't handle it anymore, and you don't want to blow up at the person or blow up at all. How do you decide whether it's direct, face to face, or let me go talk to the boss and let me have her deal with it?
That's a great question. I always believe it's better to do it face to face whenever you can, because when you go around that person, then that could damage the relationship because you're kind of being a tattletale. Adults, I think, should be able to say to other adults, "Hey, I'm not happy with how we're working together. Here's my perspective." Timeliness is everything. So if you're going to give feedback, you want to make sure you do it early on. The longer you wait, the more emotional it gets, and the further distance there is from the event that people will be confused. So I'm a big proponent of being able to have adult conversations with each other. Now, if you have a difficult relationship with that person and there's no way they can hear it from you, then you might go to your boss. But you want to be careful you don't triangle with other colleagues.
Yes.
You know,
which is easy and
which
very
is
human.
easy and fun. We all like to do that and very human. But that gets to then become a slippery slope.
The timeliness piece is so that if there is some unhappiness about an aspect of whatever's going on at work, that it doesn't recede into memory, and you've got the inherent difficulty of the conversation with then foggy memory layered on top of it.
Yeah, and then if you wait 6 months to give me feedback on something I said to you, I'm going to be like, WTF, like, why are you telling me this now? That just feels stupid. Like, you're going to just make it worse. If you have something to say it soon.
Do some people shut down the minute we get into this whole realm of talking about an individual's job?
Yes, they do. So the Harvard Negotiation Project, they're so smart. They've come up with 3 human triggers that happen when we hear we're getting feedback or when we get feedback, and these are great. The first trigger they have is the no, you're wrong trigger. So if someone gives you feedback and you're in your mind, you're crazy, that's stupid, you're wrong. And so we shut down, we don't even look to hear it because we're just convinced they're wrong. Okay, so that's the wrong trigger. And even if they're wrong, as I said earlier, there's still something you can get from it. The other trigger that keeps us from hearing feedback is about the person giving it to you. So it's not about the feedback, it's that coming from you. And that might be because we have a difficult conversation, we don't feel that we don't respect that person, I'm sorry, we have a difficult relationship, I don't like you, I think you're my competitor.
I'm mad you haven't given me more raises.
Exactly. So it's about the person, then we stop hearing it. And the third one, which I find really interesting, is the identity trigger. So if you give me feedback and it doesn't mesh with who I think I am, or if hearing that feedback makes me reconsider my identity, shut down.
Billy in Alexandria has a question. I think it might be sort of legal, but I want to hear it. To the phones, line 1. Billy, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
How you doing, Bruce and Mary?
Good, good, thanks.
Give me a percentage of people fired for minor time card violations.
For minor what violations?
Time card?
Yeah, for
that's
minor
a great
time
question,
card.
and I have no idea what that would be.
So a time card violation is...
I would imagine, does that mean that that the person's being either accused or not punching in properly?
Right. Scenario of a person punching out with somebody else.
Oh, I know. That's a good question. You know what? I'll do some research.
Okay, and we can double back on that.
We can double back on you. Send Bruce your email or text him, and we'll get some research on. That's a great question.
Yeah, Bruce.
I'll do that. Thank y'all so much.
Bruce at news8.net. Bruce at news8.net. I can imagine someone saying, because now we're working all the time, and I can see where now, not necessarily punching after somebody else, but it's a murkier world now, just because who isn't working in the morning, during the day, and later? I mean, it's like you're always on.
You're always on. And by the way, speaking of being always on, never give feedback in a text or an email. Like, try and do it face to face if you can.
How much is saying good things, either with the critiques or just separate, so that when the formal review comes, or the kind of heavy, we need to sit down because I thought that you really bombed on that sales pitch to the O'Brien company.
So there's a couple of rules of thumb on this, and a couple different schools of thought. So if I'm going to give you feedback about something important that's not good, like a constructive feedback, it's very tempting to pillow it, like, Bruce, you're so great, I think you're fabulous, and you suck at this, and you put another pillow. Try not to do that, because then people forget about that middle piece. But it's just as important to give people positive feedback on a regular basis as well as the constructive feedback. And it should follow the same model. You should be specific about what they did that was great, specific about the positive impact, and request more of that behavior.
Because, if you have to give a dog or a cat a bitter pill,
you put it
in something chewy and yummy, and they take the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
but does the dog learn from that?
No, but they get the medicine. You're not buying it.
Not buying it. Not buying it.
All right. Mary Abbajay for the Career Stone Group. She is our workplace expert, and she's with us every month as we do our Friday Focus on You. Great segment. Great having you here.
See you next month.
Thank you so much for your time. We will indeed see you next month. Scott Zimmer.